Today, we are looking at the Nebula 4K laser projector and comparing it to the Xgimi LED Horizon Pro projector, which is also 4K. This video is sponsored by Nebula, but as a part of our sponsorship agreement, I'm going to give you my honest feedback with the comparison. Let's start off by talking about the features of the Xgimi Horizon Pro. Weighing at only 6.4 pounds, this beautiful projector offers a ton of different features. First of all, take a look at the aesthetics. It offers a very simplistic, unique design with a dark gray finish. There is also a speaker grid surrounding the whole entire projector, boasting beautiful sound with its Harman Kardon speakers. We'll talk more about the speaker quality in just a moment. On the bottom of the projector, you will see a 1/4 20-inch mount, meant to be either ceiling mounted or mounted on a tripod. As for me, I mounted it on a simple tabletop and it worked very well. On the top of the projector, you will have the power button, volume control button, and play button. On the back is where you will find dual HDMI ports, an optical out port, an Ethernet port, a power jack, 2 USB ports, 3.5mm audio jack, and the power connector. With this projector, you will be required to use Xgimi's power brick adapter, which comes with the projector, unlike the Nebula 4K, which has a built-in power brick. We'll talk more about that in a minute too. On the front is obviously where you'll find the glass where the projection comes out of, and you will get the motion and obstacle avoidance sensor. Now let's move over to the Nebula 4K laser projector. It has a very similar color to it, that gunmetal dark gray look. However, with this projector, we get a beautiful red trim, something that I personally like more. And on the Nebula 4K, we have a top handle here, which makes this projector a lot easier to carry around and transport. Unlike the Horizon Pro 4K, the Nebula actually comes in at weighing over 10 pounds. It's heavier because it has that built-in power brick adapter. Moving around the Nebula 4K, you'll notice that it has larger vent holes, similar to that of that cheese grater look, which is very popular with Apple products. On the bottom of this projector, just like the Horizon Pro 4K, we have a 1/4 20-inch mount adapter, meant to be hooked up to a tripod, or you can even finagle a way to make it ceiling mounted. But I do think the Horizon Pro 4K is better for ceiling mounted systems, simply because it has a smaller and thinner profile and it's flat on both ends. The Nebula 4K is taller and it doesn't have that as flat of a shape as the Horizon Pro 4K. On the back of the Nebula 4K, we have an HDMI port, a standard 3.5mm jack port, a USB port, and the power connector. On the front of the Nebula is where you're going to find the projection glass and 4 different sensors meant for obstacle avoidance and auto keystone and autofocus features, very similar to that of the Horizon Pro 4K. Both of these projectors run off of the same Android system, so the menu is going to look very similar. Both of them have that auto-focusing and auto-keystone correction. Keystone correction allows the projectors to be placed at an angle of a room, and you can still warp the image to have it look like it's straight on your projection screen. So keystone is very important to have in your projector. I also recommend getting a projector screen, because if you just shine this against a white wall, you're going to lose a lot of that quality. The screen that I'm using is from IKEA Screens, and I really recommend it because it not only does a great job with picture quality, but it just looks great having it in your room. It also has a black velvet frame, which helps out with projection leaking. So both of these projectors offer that auto keystone and autofocusing feature. However, it isn't perfect. On both of these projectors, I had to manually autofocus and auto keystone, but sometimes it does nail that focusing and that keystoning. It just depends on how you angle these projectors and where you place it in your room. Once you set the keystone and focus on both of these projectors, you're basically done. You then just want to decide on whether or not you want to hook up an external speaker or use some surround sound. That just depends on your liking and how you have these projectors set up. Now, this is where the Xgimi wins here. It has more ports, so it has an optical out and a 3.5mm out, which means that with my Sonos Playbar, I can easily hook up the optical cable to both of these units, giving me that full 5.1 surround sound system. I also have that 3.5mm jack, and I have built-in Bluetooth on that Android TV, which is built inside of the Xgimi. So I can have wireless audio and I can have wired audio. For best performance, get a wired connection. On the Nebula, we only have a 3.5mm jack, and we lack that 5.1 surround sound. So if you're using a 3.5mm cable, you won't get surround sound. You also won't get surround sound with the Bluetooth. So I really wish we did have that optical out on the Nebula. I did talk to Nebula about this, and they really intended this projector to be used for, outside and just transporting it to different locations. So they didn't really think it was necessary to have an optical out. That's why this projector has less ports in general than the Horizon Pro 4K, but it still would have been a nice little feature on the Nebula 4K. Also, both projectors have their own wireless remote controllers. The Xgimi's has a nice metal finish, while the Nebula's is all plastic. Neither of the remotes are backlit, so it may be difficult to use at night. Now let's dive deep into the picture quality and let's compare the two projectors. The Nebula 4K, straight off the bat, is brighter and has better contrast than the Horizon Pro 4K. Because it's using different technology, for example, lasers, it's gonna overall output more brightness than the Horizon Pro 4K. We get 2500 ANSI lumens compared to 2200 ANSI lumens on the LED Horizon Pro 4K. That should tell you a lot about the brightness when comparing both of these projectors. It also affects the contrast ratio. Now, I can go on about telling you all these fancy numbers and specifications, but those numbers don't mean anything until you actually experience the projector for yourself. And when I compared both of these projectors, the Nebula just smoked the Horizon Pro 4K when it came down to contrast. You can see from both of these clips right here which projector performed better. Changing up the viewing angle, both of these projectors look just as sharp, just as clear, but again, with contrast and brightness, we get much better performance out of the Nebula 4K. Now, the camera that I'm shooting this with does not do either of these projectors justice. You have to see both of these projectors in person. They both perform very well, and it's just exciting to see where technology is going with projectors. So the Nebula 4K, again, does better with that contrast, does better with that brightness, but with that brightness definitely comes a negative, and that is light bleeding. You can see that off of the projector screen on my white wall, there is just a lot of extra light bleeding over the screen. And that definitely has to do with both of these projectors being placed at an angle and at a smaller screen size than what it really was intended for, which was 150 inches. So when you're using a smaller screen like me, for example, this is a 100-inch screen, you're gonna get that light bleeding. It's slightly less pronounced on the Xgimi. Both of these projectors also support gaming. Now, I invited my friend Remy, who actually does QA for Sony games, and he wanted to test out the lag between both of these projectors. Neither of these projectors have any significant lag, so that's very impressive. I also used a high-speed Sony HDMI cable meant for their Blu-ray players, so that definitely helps out with that lag performance there. When it came down to HDR performance, both of these projectors support HDR10. The Nebula 4K wins in this scenario, especially when gaming. Remy actually tested out the HDR by going into the Sony PlayStation 5 menu and attempted to calibrate the HDR with the Horizon Pro 4K and the Nebula 4K. The Nebula definitely outperformed the Horizon Pro 4K in this situation. And when using HDR when gaming on the Horizon Pro 4K, you can definitely see how the highlights are blown out. You probably can't tell so much in this video, but if you saw this projector in person, you could definitely tell. Next, let's talk about the built-in speakers. Both of these projectors have great speakers. I'll tell you right now that the Horizon Pro 4K does boast better bass and overall clarity, especially at higher volumes. Here's both of these projectors side by side with their speakers running.
Trinity! Help!
Next, let's go into the fan noise. Surprisingly, both of these projectors had similar fan noise ranking at around 41 decibels. This is a significant increase in performance comparing it to older projectors, so I love the fact that these things are getting just as quiet, almost just as quiet as regular TVs. Now, if you're really trying to enjoy a home theater experience, I do suggest blacking out all of the windows in your home, or at least the room where you're having these projectors set up. Any ambient light can significantly decrease the quality of the picture coming from either of these projectors. Overall, I do think both of these projectors performed very well, but the Nebula 4K definitely takes the cake here and wins my comparison. It also has a longer lifetime of 25,000 hours, simply because it uses lasers instead of LED. So if you're interested in the winning projector, which is the Nebula 4K, check out the link down below in the description box. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I will see you in another video. Peace.